D.C. is about to be a ghost town as lawmakers head home for the holidays with a lot of work still left to do. Must be nice. I'm Kevin Cirilli. It's time for the Daily Debrief. Let's get right to it. It's official. The House passed an impeachment inquiry against President Biden.
On this vote, the yeas are 221 and the nays are 212. The resolution is adopted.
House Republicans pushed the controversial resolution forward to authorize an inquiry, and basically here's what it means. That House Republicans now can go on a so-called fishing expedition because they have subpoena powers to investigate their claims. They're accusing the Bidens of making millions of bucks off of shady business dealings with foreign countries like China. Committee Chair James Comer is happier than a kid on Christmas.
We're very pleased with the vote today. I think that sent a message loud and clear to the White House. We expect you to comply with our information requests and our subpoenas.
The White House is slamming the vote. They say that it's just politics and retribution for Democrats impeaching Donald Trump twice. GOPers want to impeach Biden. Joining me now with the latest is my friend and colleague, Julia Manchester. Julia, when is this impeachment going to happen?
Your guess is as good as mine, Kevin. You know, we could see this happen in the new year once Congress comes back, but it seems like Republicans, even those vulnerable Republicans facing re-election next year who were unsure about impeaching Biden, they've all jumped on board. So we could see the House quickly move ahead with this. I think they're certainly trying to get ahead of the political calendar. We obviously have the primaries and then former President Trump's trial date, so it could get lost in the mix. But I think Republicans would like to get this done sooner rather than later.
So there's 17 congressional districts that Republicans occupy that Biden won in the last election. How specifically was Speaker Johnson able to get every single one of them to back the impeachment inquiry?
You know, in terms of how that happened, I think, look, it took a lot of maybe some arm twisting, some wrangling. Look, remember, these are all the Republicans who voted for Speaker Johnson just a few months ago. And we saw that after that, the DCCC was able to spin that around and right on these Republicans. So, look, I think these Republicans have proven to be loyal to the Speaker going forward. They want to present a united front. But at the same time, look, this puts them in a very difficult position because it's unclear whether this is a legitimate impeachment inquiry where we could yield some results here, or if this is essentially a fishing expedition. There seems to be a lot of evidence about Hunter Biden, but there's not a lot of evidence about President Biden, his father himself.
All right, from Washington to the Hawkeye State, Iowa caucus just a few weeks away, former President Donald Trump going after not just Ron DeSantis now, but Nikki Haley. Good or bad news for DeSantis that Haley is now occupying Trump's mind?
Yeah, bad news, because that shows that that Trump not only thinks DeSantis is a threat, but he also thinks Nikki Haley is a threat. And we know that Haley and DeSantis really vying for that second place spot. DeSantis wants to dominate that, but Haley has essentially dethroned him from that spot in New Hampshire. But going into Iowa, that's bad news because DeSantis has put all of his eggs in the Iowa basket. He wants to be the front runner there. So if Nikki Haley is somehow able to encroach on his lead, that's going to be difficult for him in a state that he's made a priority.
Yes or no, one-word answer before I let you go. The impeachment. Does the House impeach President Biden in January?
Yes.
We're going to leave it there. Thank you for giving me that one-word answer. Never afraid for that one-word answer. Julia Manchester, reporter for The Hill.
Thank you.
Gen Z Congressman Maxwell Frost is hitting back hard against the impeachment inquiry into President Biden. The representative from Florida has criticized Republicans, and he's questioning the legitimacy of the evidence against Biden.
To launch an inquiry with no direct evidence of the president himself, I think is really unfortunate. And well, you know, it is what it is. I mean, if you watch the first inquiry hearing on oversight, I think it was very obvious that the Republicans did not have it together.
Now, Frost recently received the inaugural Generational Changemaker Award from the Future Caucus, and he was also named on the Hill's 2023 Changemakers list. And you can check all of that online at thehill.com. The National Defense Authorization Act is heading to President Biden's desk, and he is expected to sign it. All right, let's crunch the numbers on this. The final negotiated version of the NDAA for 2024 authorizes $886 billion, and that includes $844 billion for the Department of Defense and another $32 billion for the Department of Energy's national security initiatives. And those two controversial provisions that were all over the news related to abortion and transgender health care, they are dropped prior to its passing. All right, have you heard the news? This is really cool. The Hill is teaming up with the Decision Desk HQ to bring you the 2024 Election Center. You can now personally explore all of the daily polling averages across the country, and you can make a mock-up result of those election results to see what exactly candidates need to do in order to win. And as soon as the race is called, head there for the results. You can forecast, build, and share your own 2024 outcomes with your friends and all of the other political junkies, maybe some of them you don't always agree with as well. And if you're a kid, you can also learn the process a little bit, allowing to visually see what it takes to become an elected official in the United States. Make the Decision Desk HQ and the Hills Election Center your one-stop shop for all election data and follow along in real time. Donald Trump was back in Iowa for the third time this month. In a fiery speech, the Republican frontrunner criticized President Biden while firing up his base. Trump also took a shot at President's son, Hunter Biden.
Joe Biden is a low IQ individual, and he is truly the worst, most incompetent, and most corrupt president. And we're asking you to commit to caucus for us and bring as many people as you can. Say, Irma, let's go.
The Hills Election Center and new Decision Desk HQ poll shows that Trump has a sizable lead over the field of candidates. He's 62% to be exact. Ron DeSantis and Nikki Haley, they're each at 11%, still battling it out for second place. Former Trump advisor Rudy Giuliani doesn't mince words, but now the former New York mayor is being tight-lipped. We've been keeping up with real defamation trial in Georgia, where two former poll workers are seeking more than $43 million from Giuliani for defamation and emotional distress. Giuliani allegedly accused the mother and daughter duo of committing election fraud in the 2020 presidential election. Now he says that he won't testify. Surprise, surprise. Money talks and Wall Street listens. The Dow hit a record high, 37,090 points to be exact, beating its record by 500 points. Word up on the street is that they loved what Fed Chairman Jay Powell and the central bank had to do about keeping the rates unchanged. And traders are baking in expectations that Powell will ultimately begin to cut rates sometime next year.
I think you can say that there's little basis for thinking that the economy is in a recession now. I would say that. This result is not guaranteed. It is far too early to declare victory. And there are certainly risks. It's certainly possible that the economy will behave in an unexpected way. It has done that repeatedly through in the post-pandemic period.
Joining me now to help translate all of this Fed speak is Charlie Babrinskoy. He's vice chairman and head of Ariel Investment Group. He's also a bit of a market historian. So, Charlie, thanks for being here. Good or bad news from the Fed yesterday?
Very, very good news. It really was weighing on the market that people thought the Fed was going to do something stupid. They had been so wrong about inflation, thinking that inflation was going to be transitory, that they had flooded the market with money and caused more inflation than they had been expecting. And so now the fear was they were going to react too much the other way and try to end inflation by causing a recession. And so what happened was that cyclical stocks, housing stocks, consumer discretionary stocks have gotten really pressured, while non-cyclical stocks like tech stocks have done very well. And the good news is it looks like Powell is at least acknowledging that he's not going to have to cause a recession to bring inflation down. And as a result, interest rates have dropped from 5% 10-year down to about a 4% 10-year. And that has a big positive impact on cyclical non-tech stocks.
So, Charlie, I mean, you know this. There's all these finfluencers or whatever they're called on YouTube who are predicting that there's going to be record stock market records and that yesterday wasn't just the only record. Do you think the stocks are going to keep going up before the end of the year?
I would distinguish between two different kinds of stocks. The market, when people say the market, the S&P 500 is dominated by what are called the Magnificent Seven, which is Apple and Microsoft and five other tech stocks. Those stocks have done very well. But the basic industrial companies and financial companies and banks have not done very well. So I believe that we will now get a rally of those more cyclical stocks that will catch up to some degree and close the gap with those Magnificent Seven tech stocks.
So I've got a couple more questions for you, and we'll do it quickly. Secretary of the Treasury, Janet Yellen, she says that inflation is going to be at 2% by the end of next year. Is she right? Is she wrong? Where do you see?
That's a little optimistic. I'd put it under 3, though. I think it will be under 3%. We've had no growth in the money supply for more than a year. That's good. The federal deficits are coming down a little bit. That's good. So put me down for high 2s. She's being a little optimistic at 2, but she's right. Inflation is coming down.
Is Bidenomics working?
That's not a short question. That's a long answer. But fundamentally, the employment situation is very good. We have record low unemployment. Wages are going up, although they did not go up as much as inflation. So we have had workers have not kept up with inflation. So to that, you can say it's been okay, but I wouldn't say Biden economics has been all good.
All right, you're keeping the politics out of it. I respect it. I hear you. And one word. All right, so one word answer. I want one word. What is the state of American business?
Positive.
We'll leave it there. Charlie Babrinskoi, thank you very much. Have a good holiday.
Thanks for having me.
Today marks the 11th anniversary since the deadly Sandy Hook school shooting that claimed 20 lives. Democrats called on Republicans to work with them to pass bipartisan legislation. 2023 has been a deadly year. 217 people were killed and more than 34,000 were injured in mass shootings, according to the Associated Press. Democrats say more needs to be done.
The country said we must never allow it to happen again. But this year alone, there have been 635 mass shootings in the United States of America.
In 2022, legislation was passed toughening background checks and red flag laws. Russia President Vladimir Putin says that he has not changed his military objectives and his invasion against Ukraine. Putin's remarks come shortly after Ukrainian President Vladimir Zelensky left Washington empty-handed earlier this week. Lawmakers in Washington were unable to come to an agreement over a supplemental aid package for Ukraine, Israel, Taiwan, and U.S. border funding. Meanwhile, new declassified documents from the U.S. intelligence community shows that Russia's military has been significantly impacted by Ukraine's defense. Bernie Sanders is going after the big pharma companies behind Ozempic, the diabetic drugs that they're pushing now as a weight loss cure-all popularized by reality stars in the Real Housewives franchise. This comes as poison control centers across the U.S. are seeing a 1,500% uptick in calls related to drugs like Ozempic and Wegovy as people accidentally overdose. The Senate Health Committee is expected to hold a hearing on diabetes and weight loss drugs in the coming days. Skeptical. That's one way to describe the melange feelings about COP28. U.S. Special Climate Envoy John Kerry, along with oil-rich and host country of this year's talks, the United Arab Emirates, hailed the historic agreement. It's the first time in 30 years that all nations present not only named fossil fuels as the main culprit of changing climate, but agreed to transition away from them. Others, including Al Gore, weren't impressed. Gore called it a milestone, but said it was the bare minimum. Other skeptics point out that it's still not enough. And that's it for today's Daily Debrief. My name is Kevin Cirilli. Be sure to like, share, and subscribe to The Hill's YouTube channel, and come back here soon for the intersection between politics and policy. And before we say goodbye, a final word from another Kevin, former House Speaker of the House, Kevin McCarthy. He offered some free advice to his colleagues in the House before he exits the building for good.
We should never allow this body to stop for doing what is right. So if you come across that question of whether you should do what's right out of fear of losing your job, do it anyways, because it's the right thing to do, and this is what the nation requires. I think putting people before politics is always the right answer. And I thank my friends for their kind words. I thank them for their friendship that will not end. And I thank this nation for creating a body that is represented by the people.